He was a billionaire obsessed with perfection, until he publicly humiliated his own disfigured son. But what he didn't know was that someone had been watching all along. Not a person, a horse. And what that horse did next? It exposed a legacy built on cruelty, shattered a powerful empire, and gave a scarred boy the courage to rise. The private school courtyard was lined with sleek marble benches and bronze statues of past donors, most of them alumni, all of them wealthy. Among them was Gregory Thorne, the name engraved in polished granite. The billionaire tycoon, known for building the nation's largest chain of luxury resorts, stood tall in his custom-tailored suit, flanked by 2 security guards and a crowd of fawning parents. His presence at the school was always a spectacle. But today, there was another spectacle. Walking down the path, clutching a weathered lunchbox, was a boy of no more than 11. His gait was uneven, one leg dragging slightly behind. A large burn scar covered the left side of his face, pulling down one eyelid, distorting the corner of his mouth. His name was Leo Thorne. Gregory's son. The product of a fire accident 5 years prior that the media had called an unfortunate household electrical incident. To Gregory, Leo was not a son, but a shameful reminder. A disfigurement in his otherwise perfect legacy. As Leo approached the table where the school's dean waited to introduce Gregory for the charity lunch, the tycoon's face hardened. Parents murmured as Leo paused in front of the man who hadn't looked him in the eyes for years. "Father," Leo said quietly. "I brought your favorite, ham and Swiss on rye." A pause. Gregory looked at the lunchbox, then back at the faces watching. A twisted smile formed on his face. "Is that what they call hospitality in the burn ward?" he said loudly. The crowd gasped. Leo froze. His small fingers clenched around the handle of the box. His ears burned redder than the scar on his cheek. Laughter, awkward, nervous, bubbled from some of the parents. Gregory stepped forward, towering over the boy. "You can't just walk up to a stage with a face like that and expect applause. You'll scare the sponsors, Leo." Leo turned and ran. He ran past the fountains, through the rose garden, and out the gate, toward the edge of the family estate. Toward the only place that didn't judge him, the stables. There, in the last stall, stood Ash, a black horse with a white blaze running down its nose. Ash had been Gregory's prized stallion, once slated for the Derby. But after breaking a leg during training, Ash was considered worthless and left to retire in silence. Leo had found a friend in him, a kindred spirit cast aside. As Leo collapsed into the hay beside him, Ash knelt awkwardly, his strong head nudging the boy's shoulder gently. "You're the only one who doesn't look at me like I'm broken," Leo whispered, sobbing. Ash huffed and placed his muzzle gently on Leo's lap. And at that moment, something ancient and quiet passed between them, not words, not thoughts, but something deeper. A bond of the betrayed. From the shadows of the stable doorway, someone else watched. A woman with auburn hair tied in a loose braid, standing completely still, her hand pressed to her mouth. Her name was Marianne, and she had once been Gregory's wife. But the world thought she was dead. Marianne hadn't planned to come back. For 5 years, the world had believed she'd perished in that fire, the same fire that had left Leo scarred. But she hadn't died. She had barely escaped, with a broken collarbone, shattered ribs, and the searing truth that the fire hadn't been an accident. Gregory had made it look like one. He had locked her in the laundry room, doused the door with accelerant, and walked away. But Ash, Gregory's prized stallion, had kicked the barn walls wildly that night. The stable boy had rushed in, confused, and smelled smoke. If he hadn't followed Ash's rage, Marianne would have died. Instead, she vanished. She had Leo with her, until Gregory found them, ripped the boy from her arms, and threatened to burn down the whole town if she ever returned. But something changed the day she saw Gregory humiliate Leo in public. The cruelty. The coldness. The laugh that crushed a child. It broke something inside her. She hadn't come back for revenge. She came back to save Leo. Leo didn't return home that night. The mansion lights burned into the early morning, search teams spread into the hills, and the security staff scoured the estate with thermal drones. But they didn't check the one place they all thought unimportant, the old chapel behind the stables. Long abandoned, it was where Leo sometimes hid during thunderstorms. And where Marianne now sat, beside a small fire, cradling her son. Leo's eyes blinked open. For a moment, he stared in confusion. Then he gasped. "Mom?" She put a finger to her lips. "Shoo. It's okay. I'm here." Leo trembled. "But, he said you died." "He told me, he said you burned." "I know. That's what he wanted you to believe." Tears filled his eyes. "Why did he do it? What did we do wrong?" Marianne paused. "Because Gregory Thorne doesn't believe in flaws. Only in legacy." Leo wiped his cheek. "He said I ruined his name." "You didn't ruin anything," Marianne whispered fiercely. "You survived. That's what scares him most." Ash stood outside the chapel window, unmoving. Watching. Flashback, 5 years earlier. The fire raged through the east wing. Leo, just 6, had been trapped in the playroom. Flames licked the curtains. Smoke clawed at his throat. Screams echoed, but no one came. No one, except a horse. Ash had broken his tether, galloped from the stable, and shattered the French doors with his hooves. He knelt, low enough for the little boy to climb on. He carried Leo out through fire and falling timber. And Gregory? He arrived later, holding a glass of scotch, face pale but dry-eyed. The boy made it. Pity. Now, in the chapel, Leo touched the spot on Ash's side where a long scar still lingered. "I never told anyone what you did," he whispered. "They said I imagined it." Ash lowered his head in reply, eyes full of something deep and knowing. Marianne rose. "We have to leave. Before Gregory finds out." But it was too late. From outside the chapel, a cold voice rang out. "I knew I smelled rot." Gregory stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 armed men. He looked at Marianne like one would look at an inconvenient memory. His gaze turned to Leo. "You ungrateful little worm. You ran to a ghost." Leo stepped in front of his mother. "You lied to me. You told me she left us. You said she was weak." Gregory sneered. "She was weak. You inherited it. And now you've doomed us all." He turned to his guards. "Take them both. Quietly. This doesn't leave the estate." But Ash moved first. Like lightning, the stallion reared, striking one of the guards squarely in the chest, sending him crashing into the chapel wall. The second barely had time to aim before Ash spun, kicking the gun from his hand. Gregory backed up, for once genuinely afraid. That animal. Ash didn't charge. He just stood between Leo and Gregory, immovable. A wall of defiance. Gregory stared. Then he did something no one expected. He smiled. "You really think this changes anything?" he whispered. "You think a horse and a scarred child will ruin me? I built this empire." He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. He tossed it at Leo's feet. "You want the truth? Read it." Then he vanished into the night. Inside the envelope was a birth certificate. Leo picked it up, confused. It didn't say Leo Thorne. It said Leo Anderson. Mother, Marianne Anderson. Father, unknown. Leo looked up. "What does this mean?" Marianne stared at the paper. Her breath caught. It wasn't a mistake. It was the first twist. Leo wasn't Gregory's biological son. For a long moment, the only sound in the chapel was the crackle of the dying fire. Leo stared at the birth certificate in his trembling hands. Leo Anderson. Father, unknown. He looked at his mother, confusion sharp in his voice. "Is it true? He's not my dad?" Marianne's eyes welled with tears. Not the fragile kind, but the kind that rise when years of silence finally break. She stepped forward, took Leo's hands, and nodded. "It's true," she said. "Gregory Thorne is not your biological father. He never was." Leo's knees gave out. He slumped onto the chapel floor, his mind spinning. "Then why?" His voice cracked. "Why did he keep me? Why did he hurt me like I was his?" Marianne knelt beside him. "Because you were useful. Because he needed an heir, someone to inherit the empire. And I let him believe you were his. At first, I thought I was protecting you. But when the truth became inconvenient for him, you became disposable." Leo looked up. "Who's my real dad?" Marianne hesitated. Outside, Ash snorted and stamped the ground. His breath was sharp in the cold night air, like a signal of something coming. "His name was Jacob Moore," Marianne whispered. "A horse trainer at the estate. Kind. Brilliant. And very poor." Leo blinked. "You loved him?" She nodded. "He loved horses. And he loved me. But Gregory found out. Fired him. I never saw him again. A few months later, I realized I was pregnant. Gregory had just proposed." She swallowed. "I was scared. I let Gregory believe the baby was his. He married me quickly, more for the optics than anything else. And the rest, you know." Leo's eyes burned. "So the fire, it wasn't an accident." Marianne's voice dropped to a whisper. "He said it. After I threatened to leave and tell the truth." A storm cracked above them, as if the sky itself bore witness. Meanwhile, in the grand library of Thorne Estate, Gregory poured himself another drink. He stared into the fireplace, muttering. "Leo was never mine. Good. Now it won't sting when he's gone." He didn't see the shadow standing behind the curtain. But the shadow saw everything. It was Jasper, Gregory's longtime estate manager. Stoic. Quiet. And secretly, Jacob Moore's brother. He had come to work for the Thornes under a false name, after Jacob disappeared without a trace. No one knew what happened to him. No body. No note. Only whispers of Gregory's involvement. Jasper had stayed close. Watched. Waited. And now the truth was surfacing. He quietly slipped out of the library, unnoticed. Back in the chapel, Marianne paced. "We need to leave this place, Leo. I have friends up north. People who can help us get new identities." Leo stood slowly. "No. I'm not running." Marianne blinked. "What?" "I don't care if I'm not his blood. He treated me like a stain on his name. He made the world believe I was broken." Leo's voice grew stronger. "But I'm not broken. And he needs to be stopped." She stared at her son, seeing not a wounded boy, but something else entirely. A spark of justice. A rising light. They returned to the stables under cover of darkness. Ash followed closely, protective. Jasper was already there, waiting with an old leather satchel. "I've been holding this for 5 years," he said. "It belonged to my brother." He opened it and pulled out a black journal. Leo flipped through it, pages filled with schematics, notes, and hand-drawn plans for a new kind of horse rehabilitation program. One that focused not on racing, but on healing, horses and people alike. "I never got to show him this," Jasper said, voice low. "But your father believed in it. In you." Leo clutched the journal. "Then we'll finish what he started." The next morning, a headline splashed across national news. Gregory Thorne's resort empire under federal investigation for money laundering, insurance fraud. The photos included leaked documents, financial reports, and, most damning, a whistleblower's statement. The source? An anonymous submission signed J.M., Jacob Moore. Gregory went pale. He stormed into the stables looking for Leo. But instead, he found something far more chilling. Ash stood between him and the empty stall, where Leo's belongings had once been. Gregory raised his cane threateningly. "Out of the way, you useless beast." Ash didn't move. Then Gregory noticed something taped to the wall. A photograph. Of Jacob Moore. Holding baby Leo. And scrawled below it in bold letters. "The truth can burn, Gregory. But this time, it won't be me who catches fire." Gregory turned, and froze. Behind him, dozens of cameras flashed. Jasper had invited the press. As reporters closed in, Gregory stumbled back, muttering, "You don't understand. That boy, he's nothing." And then, for the first time in years, Ash reared, letting out a thunderous cry that silenced the crowd. In that moment, captured on live television, Gregory Thorne flinched like a guilty man before judgment. The footage of Ash rearing before Gregory Thorne flooded the internet within hours. Overnight, the once revered Tycoon became a symbol of hidden rot behind luxury gates. Whispers turned to roars. The press unearthed more offshore accounts, corporate shell games, coercion of inspectors, even missing personnel records linked to former staff who had quietly disappeared. But the true crack in Gregory's empire wasn't financial. It was emotional. The world watched a billionaire cower before a scarred boy's horse. The symbolism was too powerful. It tore through every feed, every network. "The boy with the scar and the horse with the broken leg," one anchor said. They stood together, and the empire fell. Leo and Marianne didn't run. They didn't have to. The world came to them. Reporters, whistleblowers, former employees of Thorne Resorts, all came forward, inspired by the bravery of a child no one thought would speak. But Leo didn't want fame. He wanted purpose. With Jasper's help and Jacob Moore's journal, he revived the rehabilitation project his biological father had once dreamed of. The stables that once echoed with silence now rang with life. Children with trauma. Veterans with PTSD. Injured horses. Abandoned foals. Together, they healed. Together, they ran again. Gregory, on the other hand, faced a different kind of sentence. He was arrested on 13 counts of fraud and obstruction of justice. But the most damning evidence came not from spreadsheets, but from a stable cam. Footage from years ago, never reviewed, but quietly stored on Jasper's encrypted drive. It showed the fire. It showed Gregory. It showed him walking away. In court, Leo sat in the front row. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The scar on his face spoke louder than any testimony. When the judge sentenced Gregory to 30 years without parole, a quiet hush fell over the courtroom. Then a single sound, hooves, outside. Ash, waiting. But the story didn't end there. 1 year later, on a spring morning soaked in golden light, Leo led a group of children through the pasture. One of them, a little girl with a cleft lip, held tightly to his hand. She was afraid of horses. Had never touched one before. But Ash, now slower but no less majestic, lowered his head gently toward her. She touched his nose. Her eyes lit up. Leo smiled. He didn't see the scar anymore. He didn't hear his father's laughter echoing through his mind. He only heard hooves, steady and strong, and the rhythm of a second chance. As the sun rose, Marianne watched from the old chapel window, hand over her heart. Jasper stood beside her, arms crossed, a quiet smile on his lips. "You raised a storm," he said softly. Marianne nodded. "No," she said. "He raised himself. I just made sure he had a horse to lean on." Sometimes, it's not the strongest or the loudest who change the world. Sometimes, it's a boy who's been hurt. A mother who never gave up. And a horse no one thought was worth saving. The scars we carry, on our faces, in our hearts, aren't signs of weakness. They are proof that we endured, that we rose. Like Leo. Like Ash. If this story moved you, perhaps it's time to look at the scars in your own life differently. Perhaps they are not flaws, but evidence of courage. Recommended reads: Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl, a moving book about finding purpose through suffering. The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy, a modern fable about kindness, courage, and connection. If you believe no child should ever be shamed for their difference, and no animal ever abandoned for imperfection, share this story. Let them know the horse saw everything and still chose to stand.